Senator, my name's Craig Barlow.
Okay. Kirk Barlow?
Craig Barlow.
Craig.
I watched with dismay back in 2008 when the news media basically crucified George Bush and shoved Barack Obama down the throats of the American people. I'm in favor of freedom of the press as much as anybody. I've lived in 2 foreign countries. I've seen what can happen when you don't have it. But at the same time, I resent it when the news media, I'm sure they weren't funded out of his campaign funds, but nevertheless campaigned for Obama. What can be done about it? Are we powerless? Are we just going to have to sit here and let them do it again in this election like they did the last time?
The short answer to the question is no. We're not going to have to. I'm glad you raised this question. There are a couple of ways that I think we can change the game this time around, that Americans in general will change the game this time around. First of all, even though we were sophisticated technologically in 2008, we've become much more so now in 2012. The mainstream media in America, particularly the mainstream broadcast media in America, used to have something of a monopoly when it came to people getting their day-to-day news. But with each passing year as the internet's been developing, and especially over the last 4 years, you've had more and more people who are going to alternative sources to get their news. More and more people going to sites like Real Clear Politics or the Drudge Report. More and more people communicating their political ideas over Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and things like that. So there's much less of a monopoly held by the mainstream media outlets. And another thing is, I don't want to overstate the Fox News point, but Fox News has also been expanding in its reach. Fox News was the first significant sort of conservative-leaning news outlet nationally in America as far as cable and or broadcast television goes. That is having an impact as well, and it's helping to tear down this monopoly that the left-leaning mainstream media has had. There's also another significant aspect of this that I think often goes under-recognized, in part because of the mainstream news media and their bias. There was a decision rendered by the Supreme Court of the United States in January 2010 in the Citizens United case. This is a decision that's been criticized a lot, especially by the mainstream news media. And a lot of people from both political parties, from every end of the political spectrum, have been very critical of what's happened as a result of that, have been very critical of these new political entities known as super PACs. They're critical of them because they're suspicious of the ability that people may now have to contribute to political causes in unlimited sums. But what often goes unsaid and what people need to realize is that one of the reasons why that case came out the way that it did is that this is about free speech. And one of the reasons why I think conservatives benefit in the end from that is that it helps further erode this monopoly that the mainstream left-leaning news media have had in the following sense. In the past, you've had severe restrictions on the ability of a corporation to speak out on matters related to a contested partisan election, a federal election, an election for President of the United States, for U.S. Senate, or for the U.S. House of Representatives. They've been significantly limited in their ability to speak out. Their speech itself, their expenditures, making speech in support of or against any particular candidate was significantly limited. But prior to the Citizens United case, there was a big, huge exception to that. If the business in question owned a media company, if it owned a newspaper, if it owned a radio station, if it owned a television station, it could speak all it wanted in support of or against any particular candidate. Well, guess which way that cut? Guess which presidential candidate benefited to an unbelievable degree from that kind of monopoly? The president that you mentioned, the president that now serves in the White House. This has actually been going on for a long time. These laws have been on the books for decades. So the reason the left hates the Citizens United case, that decision by the Supreme Court, the reason the left hates super PACs so much, and it is the left, really, that hates them the most, is not because the left isn't allowed to have super PACs, it's because it ends their monopoly. All of a sudden, it's not just corporations that have a television station or another media outlet attached to it that can speak all they want without being subject to spending limitations with regard to federal contested partisan elections. All of a sudden, you've got basically any business, any institution can set up a super PAC if it wants to. That's free speech. That's going to help level the playing field. That's going to make it not easy, but possible, I think, for us to elect a different president.